Okay, nice. So this is our presentation on Git for FTC, and it'll tell you what it is and what it does. Right. Next slide. So about us, we're Quicksilver 8404. We're based in Leland High School, and this is our 8th year competing. And these are our past robots. So yeah. So first of all, why version control? First of all, what is version control? Version control is software that allows us to save different versions of our code. Right. So it also makes, so first of all, it backs up and restores different versions of our code, as I said, and then it helps us compare file versions at different points in time. It also lets us collaborate. So if you look at the picture on the right, multiple developers can work on the same piece of code through a shared repository, right? So you can access the remote repository or shared repository using different devices. And as a team, since we have multiple coders, this is extremely helpful. It also, it makes updating the SDK a lot easier, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Okay, so agenda. So first we went over what version control was, and then we're going to go over what GitHub is, Android Studio, and then later we're going to help you set up your GitHub account and get some other stuff set up as well, and then talk about some features. Okay, so tools. Okay, so what is Git? Git is an open source version control system. To understand this better, let's look at the diagram on the right. There are 4 stages of saving. The first is workspace. Workspace is where the files of your project are saved on your computer. You can make changes to your workspace through IDEs like Android Studio. From there, you can add the changes to the staging area, where you can prep the changes made to your files and finalize it by committing it to the local repository. A commit consists of changes made to your code, which is saved to the local repository. After the commit, the staging area is cleared. From the local repository, you can push the changes to the remote repository hosted by an online platform such as GitHub. This allows collaborators to access the code and pull it. After pulling, the changes are saved to their workspace where they can edit it. So all of this enables Git to be a version control system. Git will then keep track of revisions over time and document any changes. Additionally, Git follows a branching model. This means that there exists a master branch which saves the most recent working versions of your code. If another collaborator wants to add new features, they can create a new branch that branches off of the master branch and work on it independently. And from there, they can also add their own commits to their branch if they want, and it will not make any changes to the master branch. After that branch is fully debugged, the collaborator can then merge their branch with the master branch. And this is how Git works. So, yeah. So Git is a command line application that provides command line utilities, which basically means that it lets you use tools in the command line. And there exist applications that add a user-friendly UI like GitKraken, so you don't have to interact to get through the command line. It's just less confusing. So yeah. Right, so GitHub. GitHub is an online platform to host your code remotely. And just to clarify, it is different than Git. So it hosts the remote repository. And GitHub does not, Git does not host your remote repository. GitHub is the owner of the server which stores your remote repository. Okay. So it's linked to the local codes stored on each programmer's individual computers, and it really helps with collaboration. So 4th bullet point, you can discuss edits before merging a development branch into the master branch. So before we talked about how you can branch off of the master branch and create like a new feature and then bring it back into the master branch. You have the choice to bring up a discussion. So you can have team members check and see if there are any conflicts or issues that you need to fix before you merge. And really, it's just for feedback. And then from there, if you get confirmation, then you can merge it back in. And it holds, GitHub holds the official FTC SDK. Okay. So Android Studio. Android Studio is an IDE. It's an integrated development environment. And because it's integrated with Android, it allows you to push code directly to your phones. It also has debugging abilities. Wait, is someone unmuted? Sorry. Okay, nice. It also has debugging abilities, which is why a lot of people like to use Android Studio because of its built-in features and its compatibility with phones. Right, so setup. Okay, so this is a diagram of how, or this slide shows how to make a remote repository and what you should do with it, right? So starting at the bottom left, you have to create an account, right? Sign in, create a remote repository, and then from there you find the link that directs to your remote repository. From there, you create a remote that directs to the remote repository using the URL. And then you go to GitHub, find the FTC SDK repository, create a remote that directs to there. And then you can use those two remotes to update your local repository. And yeah, from the local repository, use an IDE like Android Studio. And then from there, you can use Android Studio to push your code to a robot controller. Right, so GitHub, organization, and accounts. So this is the opening page for GitHub, and there's a button on the top right to sign up. And so you just put in your username, email address, password. And then after you've created an account, you can create a new organization, right, at the top right. And from here, you choose a plan for your team. So the point of an organization is it allows you to, it allows you to create remote repositories that are owned by the organization. So you can add your team members onto the organization and they will have access. And they'll have access to the remote repositories. And it just makes sharing a lot easier. I think someone's unmuted. Okay, so next slide. So set up your team. Once you've chosen your plan, you put in account name, contact email, and then you can choose to have the organization belong to a personal account or a business or institution. And if you choose the second option, you just have to make sure to put in the name of the business or institution. Right. Okay. After that, from the, I guess, home page for the organization, you click on people. This is to add people to your organization. You click people. And there's a button that says invite member. And right. Okay. This is, okay. So normally after you click new invite member, there's something that should drop down and it should just say to input someone's email address or their name, and then you just click OK, and then you can add the member. and then they'd just be added to your organization. They'd have access to the files that are within your organization. Okay, yeah. So this is if you want to create a new repository inside of your organization. So you'd click on new on top right, or like the new button. This will pop up. So you have the owner, right? That's the organization. And then you have repository name. You can put a description if you want. You can make it public or private. For first or FTC, we probably want to make it private, right? And you can choose to initialize this repository with a README. It is suggested, like it's recommended that you don't want to initialize with the README because you can always add that later, and then just make it better. So yeah. And then you create the repository. Right. Okay. So if you want to give access to someone just to one repository, I guess, you go to manage access and then you can invite teams or people. Wait, I guess this is, yeah, this is for the no, this is for the repository, right? So you can add people to your repository and yeah, you just search them by username or email. Right. So installing Git. Okay, so if you want to install Git and you have a Linux computer, good news, you probably already have Git on there. It's pre-downloaded. But if you don't, you can always download it manually through the command line. So if you have an Ubuntu or Debian distro, you put in the command line at the top. And then if you have a Red Hat, Fedora distro, then you just put in the one at the bottom. So yeah, it's pretty simple. But otherwise, if you don't, you have to go to the Git homepage, and this is what it'll look like. And if you have Windows, you just click on the download button. Right. So once you click that, this should pop up and it should just start downloading. If you don't, there's a button for that, but yeah. Right. So once you click on the installer or run the installer, this installation wizard will come up and basically you just click next until you get to the end. You don't need to change any settings, just leave them default. And by the way, we will be taking questions at the end. So yes, we're not ignoring you. Yes. Okay, so side note, GitHub student tag. Okay, so to get this GitHub student pack, you basically have to send a pic of your ID. You can find this page on GitHub. And basically, you get more features on GitHub. And since this GitHub student pack is tied with GitKraken, you can also get premier access to GitHub Kraken. And GitHub Kraken is the next thing. Right, so using GitKraken. So basically, before we talked about how there are UIs that you can use to make Git a more user-friendly program, right? So there's UIs that you can use, and GitKraken is just one of those, right? So when you first open GitKraken, after you download it, there's this is basically what will come up, right? So there's an option to open, which would open a existing repository that's on your local that's in your local repository. So it's like already downloaded on your computer. There's a clone option, which basically means that you can copy a remote repository, or you can download a remote repository that's not on your computer, basically bring it onto your computer and open it with GitKraken. You just have to put in the URL that directs to that remote repository, right? And then there's init. And basically that just means that you can make your own repo, or yeah, you initialize your repository. Right. So downloading Android Studio. So you just search up Android Studio. This is their homepage, I think. And then you just click downloads Android Studio. Yeah, just if you really want to read through the terms and conditions, you can. You know, but basically you just click the check mark and you download. And when you download it, when you download it and when you open it, this is what will come up, right? So this is the opening screen. So you have an option to start a new project, open one, and then there's a few other ones. You should, if you want to have Android Studio to be the way that you edit your FTC code, you should probably download the FTC SDK first and then open that instead of creating a brand new one. So you just edit the SDK instead of just creating a brand new one. So we recommend that. And you get Kraken. Yes. So the workflow. Okay, so the process. We've kind of gone over this a little bit. So as we said before, Git follows a branch system, right? So you have the master branch, and let's say that you wanted to create a new feature and you wanted to add teleop program, right? So you create tele.java, and let's say that you made a lot of edits. You want to commit. So you make a couple commits and you finally get to a product that you think works and you're happy with it. You can submit a pull request, which means that basically what that does is it lets your team know, and it opens up a discussion to make sure that your code will actually work with the master branch. So there are no conflicts and there are no errors. So once you get the approval, or once you get approval, your branch will merge with the master branch. And if it works, it'll save to the master branch. Right, so creating new branches. So once you open GitKraken and then you open your repo, there's a button at the top that says branch. And that's pretty much how you branch. It's pretty simple, you know, that's kind of the point of the UI, is to make things easy. So switching branches. You pretty much just click on the right, it'll show local, right? And if you have multiple branches, there'll be more names under master, and you can just click on those. So yeah. So committing changed code. So when you make a change, it'll be in unstaged files, right? So back to, what is it, the 7th slide, I believe, we had a big diagram about like how there was the workspace, there was, let's see, there was a workspace, there was a staging area, there was a local repository, and then there was the last one, right? So unstaged files, that's edits, those are changes that are still in your workspace, right? And then the staged files is your staging area. So when you have changes in your unstaged files, press stage all changes and it'll bring it into the staged files. So it'll bring those changes into your staging area, right? And once it's in the staging area, you can add a commit message under that. And basically you just put a description on what your changes do to the code. And it's mainly just for informing your team what happened and what the commit does, right? So it's in the stage files. The second you click the green button at the bottom, which will turn green once you've filled everything out, it will become a commit, right? So it'll be committed to the local repository and the staging area will be cleared, right? So yeah, you just click the green button at the bottom once you're ready, and then you can push code to the remote, right? So at the top, there's a button that says push. Yeah. Okay, so pull requests. So when you want to merge two branches together, first you have to go to the branch that you want to merge with, right? And then you go to this, look at the tab on the left and go to the plus button and press create pull request. And then you'll have to fill out this stuff, right? So the first method to merge, right, is with GitKraken. So basically you just fill the stuff out. You choose the repo, you choose two repos, right? The branches, and then you put a title description. The description's mainly for people who want to see what you're doing, right? And then you create a pull request. Method 2 is with GitHub's web interface. So as you can see on the right of the picture, there's a green button that says new pull request, and you choose two branches to merge. There'll be something that pops up. So updating the SDK. Okay, so if you go to the left side, right, you have to create remotes so that your code has access to different repos, right? So first you have to go to the branch. I believe you have to go to the branch that you want to. No, you don't. Never mind. Click on the plus. You have the name there, and you should find the URL that directs to the remote repository. If you're using GitHub, it would be github.com, and then there'd be a lot of ID. So you find the URL, you put that in there, right? And then you add it. I believe you do have to be on the branch that you want it to be pointing to, I think. No, never mind. Okay, so pulling SDK changes. So let's see. It has to, when you pull SDK changes, you're using the remote, right? So you're pulling from the FTC SDK repo that's on GitHub, right? And you use the remote to merge, right? So you can right click on your remote, and then you look down and it says merge, and then it'll say your remote name and then develop into master, and you're going to want to click that. Right. So the end. So before, hold on, before we end, wait, can we go back one slide? Okay, so you are, sometimes if you merge two branches, you will have something called a branch conflict or merge conflict. And basically you have to go through the error messages and find out what went wrong, so that your code is functional. So yeah, that's the end. Do you guys have any questions? Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name, but Kenneth.
Hi. There's somebody there?
Yep.
I was wondering if somebody besides me. You can do things a little bit more simply. On GitHub, you can create your own, what's it called? Let's see. You can create your own repository by forking FTC's repository. So then you don't have to do your GitKraken to do that. From within Android Studio, you can do pull and pushes. So you don't have to have a separate mechanism working there.
Right. So so we kind of mentioned this before. Android Studio, because it's integrated with Android, you can push directly to the phones. Yes. This is for if you want to push to your remote repository, I think. Right, Andrea? I think that's true.
So because of a point, it is true that by forking, you also you still get to copy the FTC SDK on like as a Git repo, and you can make your own changes to it. But by setting your own upstreams, it just gives you better control over how and when you want to pull things. And specifically, if you want to go through like a review process of the updates of the FTC SDK, like you can choose to only pull certain changes, but not others in case there's any conflicts with your existing code.
Well, we don't have very many developers, but the way that we've done that is you always develop in your own branch. Then you end up merging master into that branch before you push.
Yes, so we did mention that, but I was referring to specifically changes made by FTC to the FTC SDK. So the code that FTC provides you.
Then what you do is you end up fetching from FTC and merging that into your master.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can do all of that from within Android Studio.
Android Studio does provide you with a Git UI where you can do this. But even if you choose to not use Android Studio or use GitKraken or just use Git from the command line, by setting the FTC SDK itself as another remote repository for your Git repo, you can do this. The end result is roughly the same between forking and just manually setting it as an upstream or as another setting the FTC SDK as a remote repo.
The comment that I'm making is really FTC usually freezes the changes that they want. They do make some changes, but you're sort of making this is sort of Git heavy rather than talking a lot about what Git will buy you, or that the easy ways of using Git so different team members can develop stuff. You're not always pulling stuff from FTC. Yeah, I'm sort of overwhelmed by the mechanism that you're presenting to your audience about what they have to do to make this work. Yeah.
Well, the system that we have working with our team is we have for our seasonal code, we have 2 remote repositories. One points to the seasonal code and the other one to the FTC SDK. Whenever there's an update, you can just pull from the FTC SDK, and that's it.
So
does that make sense?
We're at cross purposes.
I'm sorry?
We're at cross purposes here.
I'm not 100% sure what you mean. Hello?
I'm not sure how I can say it. You know, I think you've done things in an overly complex fashion.
Okay. But this system, there's a bit more setup involved than just pressing the fork button on GitHub. But the end result is that you still, with one command, just by pulling, you can grab any changes that you want from the FTC SDK. I would like to keep talking about this, but I also think that we should dedicate some time to other questions. Is there anyone else who, yeah, wants to ask something? Aryav.
So, like, are there any examples of Git like repositories that we could use for FTC? Like anything that's like needed?
Aiden, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. There is an official FTC SDK. Wait, Andrea, are you gonna look for it or should I just drop it in chat?
If you have the link right now, you can, yeah, put it in the chat.
Okay, I don't have it right now, but I could find it and drop it for you in the chat. That is the only repo that you should need, I think. So yeah.
Could you also like, I heard that you can use TensorFlow with FTC. Can you show us like the Git repository for that as well?
Wait, can you repeat that? Sorry.
So you can use like TensorFlow with your like FTC robot. Can you show us like a Git repository for that?
So we actually don't use TensorFlow ourselves. We use different programs for computer vision. So I'm not familiar with the setup for TensorFlow, but it is the process of getting additional libraries or modules working with the code tends to be a little involved. I don't have the answer for you right now for that.
If I can step in on that, in the past for like ultimate goal, they've included the TensorFlow libraries and they've included models to do the recognition. The current FTC library or the current FTC repository still is saying ultimate goal. I don't know if they're going to update that. But I would expect some TensorFlow stuff some model stuff to be available.
Okay.
On the first GitHub, let's see, on the whole thing, in addition to the FTC controller, it looks like there's also another repository for training TensorFlow models, but I haven't looked at that.
That is true. I do think that TensorFlow might be included in the FTC robot controller repo. We haven't used it, so I don't know 100% how to use it, but there are also other things that are included, like Vuforia, which is computer vision library. So for computer vision, using a combination of TensorFlow and Vuforia, which FTC gives you, could be ideal.
Okay.
Cool.
Oh yeah, by the way, could you like send that I think it's called FTC JDK in the chat?
Oh yeah. I don't know if it's just me, but I'm looking and I can't find the option to send a message in the chat.
So I suspect you guys are recording, and I think if you keep recording, you will not have the chat option.
Okay, then in that case, you can just search up FTC robot controller, and the first thing that you find online should be the correct GitHub. Yeah, it should be the GitHub repo to the FTC SDK. You should just search up
Okay.
FTC robot controller.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. Kanaj? I'm really sorry, but I don't know how to pronounce your name.
That's good enough. Thank you. Are you guys able to share the presentation that you made today? Again, you can't really put it on chat, but once you guys stop recording, maybe the chat window will show up and maybe you can drop the presentation slides in there if you are ready to share it.
Sure. I don't know when we're going to stop recording. I think that's going to be up to the host, but I think we can share the slides when this is over. If not right now, we can send out an email to everybody who was in the workshop with a link to the slides.
I believe this is a partnership with NorCal FTC. So I believe we're recording this so that we can put this on their website, and there should be, hold on, I need to check real quick, but the recording and the slides should be provided. I'll just try to find out where real quick.
I had one more question. You said that you used Euphoria for computer vision. Is there like a GitHub repository for that?
For Euphoria itself?
Yeah, for Euphoria itself. Is there a library for it?
Euphoria should come included with the FTC SDK. So I don't think you need to worry about getting it set up. It should already be there for you.
Okay, so it'll work if we have like the Rev Robotics controller, like if we attach like a camera to it, like Euphoria will work with that with like the normal FTC SDK.
Yes.
Yes, with one proviso, that there need to be the models, and they're not in the current repository. There need to be models for the elements that Euphoria is going to recognize, and the pictures that are put on the sidewalls of the field. Those aren't there yet.
Okay.
Yes.
So do you guys use Android Studio at all or no?
Yes. It's just the IDE we use to compile and push code to the phones.
All right, so follow-on question. Have you guys figured out how not to have to switch the wire between the robot controller and your computer? Have you guys figured out how to do Wi-Fi at all?
Oh, yeah. You can do ADB, Android debugging. I think that's what it stands for. ADB over Wi-Fi. So as long as your phones are connected on the same network, you should be able to use ADB to connect to the phones over Wi-Fi and push. The process for how to do that is on the phones, on the, I think, self-inspect, the robot phones, the self-inspect button, it should tell you its IP address on the Wi-Fi network. And then you can use that to ADB Android Studio should download ADB, like the ADB program onto your computers. So you could use the command line to connect via ADB to the phone using the IP address that it self-reports, and that should work. However, I think that there is also a plugin to Android Studio that we currently use to just, press a button and connect. So there should also be a plugin for that to make it a little bit simpler.
We actually do something. We like to have a Wi-Fi connection to the internet so that you can be using your computer and search on a browser to find some things out. So we end up getting a USB Wi-Fi plugin, and we end up telling that USB Wi-Fi plugin to talk to the robot. And then you can search around and you can find out that there are some, you can put the ADB commands that you need into external tools. on the menu item for Android Studio. And there are only 2 IP addresses that you need to connect to. One IP address is for phones, and the other IP address is for the control hub. So we've set up, I think, 5 commands so that we can easily do those connections. But if you search the web, you can find some information on how to do that.
I'm sorry, but this, okay, our system, I think, might be a little bit simpler. One way to do this, to push code while also being able to access the internet, is that the phones can connect to your home Wi-Fi, and then you can ADB over that. The only downside to this is that then you can't do teleop at the same time, because the driver's side phone needs to be connected to the Wi-Fi of the robot phone itself. But otherwise, if you're just hooked up to your house's Wi-Fi, you can go both push and use the internet. Just as long as then you switch the Wi-Fi network that the robot controller itself is using. Aryav.
I had one question, like, what is the concept of using like GitHub for your FTC? Like, what are the benefits and like, why would you use it?
Aiden.
Okay, so we use Git because it allows us to store different versions of our code, right? So if we make a mistake and like we really messed up, we can always go back to a previous version that worked, right? Also, using Git, it lets us, it allows for collaboration, right? So Git lets us store our code in remote repositories, which basically make it accessible to any contributors, right? So those would be the main reasons why. It also helps, it makes updating the SDK, the FTC SDK, a lot easier. So yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Are there any other questions? All right.
If there aren't any other further questions, I'd like to call this session to an end, and I would like to thank people very much for attending. Thank you, Jerry, for all your input. Appreciate that. And if there aren't any questions, we will be uploading this to Aiden. Are we putting that on FTC NorCal?
Yeah, so it should be on the NorCal FTC website, which is just norcalftc.org. So yeah.
Oh, looks like we have a question. Go ahead, take care of it, Aiden.
So, do we like, can we rely on GitHub for like all the libraries, or are there any other like sources for FTC libraries?
Personally, we like to use GitHub, but there are other services, other platforms that will host your remote repos. It's just preference.
Additionally, for the libraries that you can use inside of your code, there's generally a variety of places to get them. Like we use OpenCV for computer vision. So if you want to download that, there's one library on GitHub that does it, but OpenCV also lets you download just like an executable that you can use as the library. There's a variety of places from which to get the libraries for FTC, but GitHub is mainly just the place that hosts your code. It's separate from the FTC libraries.
So what exactly does OpenCV do, or is that like just the name of a like repository?
OpenCV is a computer vision library. So it's the library that we use to process the video feed from the webcam. Vuforia also does this, but we prefer using OpenCV. So this is the one that we use. It's up to you whether you want to use Vuforia over OpenCV. But if you do choose to use OpenCV, then you would have to go through the process of setting it up. Again, there is a GitHub repo, I think called Easy OpenCV, that we rely on, that makes the process of installing OpenCV on your code pretty easy. But yeah, just not, it's a different computer vision library from Vuforia. And unlike Vuforia, it's not built into the FTC SDK or packaged in.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
And with that, I'd like to call an end to the festivities. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and hope to see you out on the field.
Thank you.
One last question. Do you guys have like an email address so if we need help, like we can ask you?
I believe we do. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Tibbs, but I think it's contact@quicksilver.com. We can probably include that in the email with the slides.
Can you
We
repeat that
will
real
do
quick?
that indeed, and make sure to include the X in the name.
Ooh, yeah, if you want to write it down right now, contact@Quicksilver, Quicksilver with an X. So contact@quicksilver.com.
Isn't it Quicksilver 8404 dot? Wait, never mind. It might be a different one. Hold on.
I remember it being contact@quicksilver.com. Mr. Tibbs, do you remember what it is?
This is the our president's responsibility to know this. Sorry. I will confer with her.
Contact Quicksilver. Oh, no, yeah, you're right. Contact@quicksilver8404.org, not even .com. My bad. Contact@quicksilver8404.org. If you want to shoot us an email.
Is it contact or contacts?
Contact, singular.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you for attending, folks. We're going to end it now.
Thank you so much for